So we are recording now. Welcome to the conference. Welcome to day 2 of the conference. Great seeing everyone here today. I want to acknowledge you for taking the time to participate in the conference. I know that we are working all day in front of the computer. We had to be many hours in front of the cameras. We get to see people and people get to see us much more than we're used to. And that can be also tiring, just being in front of the camera all day. So I want to recognize everyone for being willing to keep learning and growing and sharing in community. It's great. Today we are going to have in the morning Jason Sacket and Carol Geffner. They're going to be introduced in a few minutes. Before we do that, I want to invite everyone to do a brief centering exercise. So we can bring ourselves here today for what we're going to be covering. So I want to invite everyone for just 1 minute. I know for some of you are very familiar with centering exercises. For some of you may be new. You may not like them, even though you're familiar. That's okay. So if you don't like centering exercises, you don't have to do it. Just take 1 minute to bring yourself to the here and now. So centering helps us to do a pause, to reflect, to be aware of where we are, what we need, and connect in a deeper way than when we keep doing things automatically. So with that in mind, I want to ask if you want to turn off your camera, you can do that, or keep the camera on, whatever you want. I want to invite you to close your eyes for a minute, and I want you to pay attention to your breathing. How is your breathing today? You're going to inhale and exhale and pay attention to your breathing. And we're going to do a brief body scan from the top of your head to your feet, going slowly down, paying attention to how is your body today. Do you find any places that are tense or in pain? And when you go to your feet, I'm going to invite you to consider imagining that there is a light, like a scan coming up, scanning your body from your feet to your head, going through the different parts of your body. You may want to move a little bit if you feel some parts that are tense or in pain. Be aware of that. And after you have done a little bit of your body scan, I want to ask about your emotions. How are your emotions today? How are you getting here today? Are you tired? Are you joyful, curious, enthusiastic? Are you angry, sad? What emotions are you having today? How are you feeling? So be present to the emotions that you are bringing today. And finally, let's go to our thoughts. What is in our mind? What are our concerns? What are our thoughts? There is a lot going on today in the world. How is what's going on affecting us? And what we need to let go to be present. What ideas we need to put aside so we can be present today to learning from the presenters, from our colleagues here, for connecting, for building community. And the main goal here is not only to learn new ideas, but to reflect, to stop and think and reflect about our life, our work, and our future. And with that in mind, I want to invite everyone to open your eyes, come back here to the session. Thank you for being here. And Jason, here in the conference, we have around 60 people who sign up from 10 different countries. So we are really glad. It not was like last year. Jason had an important role last year in our first conference locally here in Los Angeles. And we're very happy that you are back, Jason, to do this session today. So you're going to introduce by Christine?
Elaine.
Elaine.
Yes. Hi, welcome back, everyone. We're so excited to see you here again. It's my pleasure to introduce Jason Sacket. He's an executive coach. He's a certified mentor coach and a certified coach supervisor. And I had the pleasure of meeting him some years ago through USC, but he now has his own practice. And he will be talking about when coaching sessions go south, managing conflict in the moment. And he will tell us a little bit more about himself and perhaps also share 2 fun facts. Jason.
Well, thanks everyone for being here this morning, especially the other presenters. It's very nice of you to come to my presentation when I didn't come to yours, which was very uncool. For those of you who have seen this workshop before, in some version, you're probably going to be bored. There isn't really anything much new. And for those of you who haven't seen it before, you're probably going to be bored too. So about me, you can read my bio. I'll just go with the fun facts. I love fishing. I rollerblade a lot. And when I was 12 years old, Kenny Rogers stole my pizza. It's a true story. I was out to dinner with family friends. We went to an Italian restaurant, ordered a extra large pepperoni, waited about 15 minutes. Kenny Rogers walks into the restaurant. Ooh, Kenny Rogers, Kenny Rogers. 2 minutes later, Kenny Rogers gets an extra large pepperoni pizza, and we wait another 20 minutes. So that extra 20 minutes led to me holding about a 20-year grudge against Kenny Rogers, but eventually I forgave him. All right, so so let's get to it. I watched Eve Turner's workshop on systemic coaching, and she said, "Let's this is a good time to move around, get out your weights, and it's a good time to like use your little dumbbells and exercise." I'm taking a different approach. I say it's a good time to bring out your boxing gloves, you know, and and if I can't land a joke, I can at least land a punch. So. A little over 2.5 years ago, I was at the Coaching Supervision Conference in Victoria, Canada, and Peter Hawkins was giving this talk. Well, he was giving a talk all day, basically, and he was talking about this CEO that he was working with, and who suddenly exploded and got in his face and said, you know, how many Fortune 500 companies have you led? I'm not going to try to impersonate Peter Hawkins's English accent. Yeah, the CEO says, how many Fortune 500 companies have you led? And Peter says, the only thing that saved me in that moment was my 20 years of coaching supervision. And I said, So during the break, I stalked him, and I approached him and I said, hey, Peter, you know, I might have a shortcut for you. And I told him all about this approach I have to managing upset, you know, compassionate disarming to manage upset in the moment. And he was like, Jason, that's great. This is great stuff, and I want to work with you more about this. Okay, that last part's a complete lie. I did approach Peter Hawkins, and we did talk. Mainly, he just asked me where I was from. I said Los Angeles, and we talked about Venice Beach and all the, you know, odd characters around Venice Beach, and that was it. So I never did get to tell Peter about this wonderful approach called compassionate disarming, but I'm going to tell you about it today, and it could help you out quite a bit. Now, is anybody wondering, like, why are we talking about this? Because coaching always goes well and our clients always love us? Okay, you don't have to respond. Let me see a show of hands. How many people, at least on the first screen, because I can't see the second screen, how many people have never had a client get angry at them for anything? Nobody. Okay, good. Let me go to the second screen. Any hands up? One hand up. Okay. So if you're probably gambling with house money at this point, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. People get angry for all kinds of reasons, that some of which make no sense, you could never predict, and you would never see coming. And those are the most fun times when it happens, right? When someone gets mad at you about something that you have no idea why and never could have predicted, catches you off guard. And those can be tense moments, right? Because, you know, if a client gets mad at you, you could be fired on the spot. You could be complained about to a superior. You know, you could get a bad Yelp review. Lots of bad things could happen. So the way I approach it is, it's going to happen. It's unavoidable, no matter how nice you try to be. sooner or later someone's going to get mad at you. So best to be prepared to handle it. And as long as you are prepared to handle it, and you can handle that upset when it happens, you'll be fine. You don't have to tiptoe around. You don't have to walk on eggshells. You will always have this technique in your back pocket. Okay, so all right, switching gears just a little bit, and I'm going to talk at you for a little bit. It's gonna be like drinking from a fire hose for about 10, 15 minutes. I'll try to interact where I can. I'm probably just gonna call on people, and then we're gonna do some practice sessions later. For those of you who just wanted to show up and listen today, I have bad news. I'm gonna put you to work. You're gonna have to practice this. There's no point in watching something. You can't learn to do it that way. You can't learn to drive by watching somebody else drive. You gotta like get behind the wheel and get into a parking lot with no cars in it, like on a 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And this is the parking lot. All right, so when it comes to confrontation, how do you react? When someone has gotten mad at you, when someone has criticized you, confronted you, gone off on you, what's your natural reaction? Like, I don't want to hear your well thought, patient reaction. Like, what do you really want to do when someone is really nasty to you? Paul, you looked at me. What's your natural reaction to confrontation?
Well, this might sound like it's well thought out, but I get very still, and that's just a lot of family of origin stuff. Just trying not to get eaten by the big monster.
Okay, yeah, that's thank you. That's not very well thought out, and that's one of the reactions I had in mind. Getting very still, getting very quiet, kind of making yourself a small target. Okay, let's see, Colleen, you're in the middle of my screen. What about you? How do you react to when people get mad, when people get in your face?
Yeah, so probably the opposite. Like, I want to yell and I'm mad and all that. And over the years, I've learned to work with that. Yeah. Oh yeah, those gloves are fabulous. Yeah. I have more of the confrontation. I love confrontation because you actually get into a better place. So I'm very comfortable with it, and it's been a good journey for me to improve my communication skills and conflict. So I'm looking forward to getting better at it from your work today. Okay,
thank you. Anybody else? I'll let the last person ring in. Who has a reaction to confrontation that's different than those first two?
Mine is to outsmart them. To outsmart them with logic and facts and reason, and to win intellectually.
Okay, I think you were on my other screen. Who was that was just talking?
Julie Schumann.
Julie. Hey, Julie.
Hi, Jason.
I remember you.
How you doing?
I still can't find you on my screen though. Where'd you go? Oh, there you are, here in the corner. Okay, so many windows to look at. Yeah, so you try to outsmart them. You try to logic with them. You try to maybe explain, or outwit. Okay, yes, this is exactly what I was looking for. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. And these are what I call the 3 natural responses to confrontation. So we have counterattack, defensiveness, and submission. Not in that order. So Paul, your response is what I would call submission. Colleen, you're a counterattacker. You somebody gives something to you, you give it right back. And Julie, if you try to outsmart, if you try to outwit, if you try to explain, that is essentially defensiveness. You are standing your ground. You're not letting the person. You're not exactly attacking back. But as you can see with the cat there, you're not too far from it. And so these are natural responses, and I would encourage you all to be very honest about what your natural response is, because it's going to come out, right? If you are caught off guard, which is usually when this happens, right? Like this happens always at the worst time. It never happens when you're like really well rested, and and right after you've done like a nice meditation. No, like this happens like on a Friday afternoon, when you're like an hour away from beer o'clock or wine o'clock, and you're at your lowest, and so what comes out of you is this natural response. I'm with you, Colleen. I'm a counterattacker. You come at me. The thing I naturally want to do is I want to come right back at you. And if you catch me at my worst, that's what I'll do. So the problem is that none of these really actually work very well to handle conflict. They all make the problem worse. Counterattack, pretty obvious, right? Somebody yells at you, you yell back. That goes south really fast. Defensiveness, same thing. You'll see this in my video demonstration. My defensiveness is probably the most common natural response to confrontation. We automatically, when somebody attacks us, we want to defend ourselves. It's almost innate. But what that does is it inspires the other person to just come at you harder. It does not disarm their anger. Their anger remains. They continue to not think well. They continue to come at you. The problem doesn't get better. And submission, I always say that, like, when you're in a cage with an 800-pound gorilla, submission's kind of all you got. But it's still like dying a slow death, because you may make yourself a small target, but the aggressor is also undeterred. They're emboldened. They can just keep coming after you. They have no reason to stop coming after you, and the problem does not get better down the line either. So there's problems with all three of these. So we need a fourth. We need an alternative, and that's what I'm giving you today. I'm giving you what I'm calling compassionate disarming. So share my screen again. Disarming is the fourth intervention. Okay, it involves none of the three. So it's not defensive. It's not counterattacking. It is diffusing the energy of the confrontation by using sincerity, listening, and empathy to address the beliefs and feelings of the complainant, the aggressor, and remove their ability to remain angry at you and create an opportunity for meaningful dialogue. So if you think about, like, if somebody's coming at you with a stick, trying to hit you, counterattack is, you either hit them back or you try to hit them first. Defensiveness is you try to block the stick. Submission, try to cover up, don't let the stick hit a vital organ. Disarming is taking away the stick. You're trying to take away the other person's power. And you do that not by outsmarting them, but by addressing their feelings and beliefs. This is an evolved response to confrontation. It's not a natural response. The natural responses we've covered. This is evolved, which means that you have to really buy into it. It takes practice. It is harder than it looks. I will make it look easy. It is definitely not easy, which you will discover when you try to practice it. And actually, I will go even further than that and predict that many of you will do this utterly wrong when you practice it. And that's okay, because we're in the parking lot. We're allowed to sort of drive around slowly and run into stuff. No one's going to get hurt. We're not on the freeway yet. So we want to practice this, because in live situations, it's going to be even harder. It's not for everyone, but I've yet for anyone to tell me a better way to respond to conflict. I can't think of anything better. There is one other option, which is basically like removing yourself from the situation and sort of using transferred power, some higher authority to deal with the conflicting person. If you're being attacked in the street, by someone who's completely deranged, you're going to call the police. You're not going to try to disarm them. But for our purposes, I want to leave that one out of the conversation. I don't want to have to rely on anybody else to resolve conflicts for me. The main thing about disarming is you want to think about it as winning. Okay, you don't want to be right in these situations. You want to win, and to me, winning in a confrontation means two things: that the other person stops attacking me, and that I can help that person think better so that we can have a productive conversation. That's a win. If I'm dealing with someone who's completely deranged, a win might be that the person just stops attacking me and walks away. We're coaching, so hopefully we're not coaching deranged people. I wouldn't recommend it. So so let's go for that higher goal, which is, get the person to become reasonable, have a productive conversation. That's a win. A win is not imposing our opinion on the other person or making them believe us. Okay, with me so far? All right, so there are 4 key pieces to compassionate disarming, 4 things that make this work. And they are emotional management. So you must be grounded to do this properly, okay? If you are riled up or rattled by the other person, you will not be able to do this effectively. You will revert to one of those natural responses, and you won't be successful. So you must manage yourself first. Now that can be done in a number of ways, which we're not really going to get into that in this conversation. That's kind of another workshop. I think Damien kind of touched on it. It's like, you got to ground yourself. Now, that was really nice, that visualization, that little mindful exercise that we did before I started speaking. When someone says, how many Fortune 500 companies have you run? Like, you're not going to say, hold that thought. Let me visualize for 60 seconds. You can't afford to do that. So you may have to have some really rapid grounding techniques, or you might have to build in a delay. Okay, and that's actually my favorite. When somebody gets in my face, my first response is, hold that thought for 1 second. I'll be right back. Whatever you have to do to build in just a moment of pause to ground yourself. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. The second cornerstone is sincerity, right? Like, you cannot fake this. Disarming is not a gimmick. You can't just pay lip service to people's thoughts and feelings. You must be sincere. You have to care, or they will pick up on that and it will blow up in your face. So have to be sincere. It really helps to have a diffusing manner or diffusing demeanor, like my dog here. Can you see her? So imagine that she just chewed up your favorite pair of shoes. Okay, you'd be pretty mad, right? But look at that face. How can you be mad at that face? That's a diffusing demeanor. In human terms, I don't know how many of you saw Eve Turner's workshop, but she has a very diffusing demeanor. She's speaking with someone and she says, "Oh, let me just stop babbling on." Just very diffusing, very self-deprecating. That works really well. I don't really have that. I have to work at that, and you can work at it. For those of you who don't have it naturally, you can work on it. The quickest route to a diffusing demeanor is just using, sort of nice body language, being very open, being very kind of, direct and facing the person, not like this, and not like trying to leave the room. That's the quickest way. Again, you may have to work on that in a, outside of this workshop. What I'm going to be focusing on mostly today is the 4-step technique. There's 4 steps to disarming that really make it work. And before I get into those, I'm going to demonstrate it for you in a video. Hopefully it will work. Well, these are the steps. I'll just mention them to you and then I'll show you my video. So we have an initial statement of gratitude. We have what's called finding the truth in the complaint, cognitive empathy, and emotional empathy. And then when we get through those steps, we wrap up, make sure that the person is disarmed, and then if they are disarmed, we can shift to problem solving. We don't want to problem solve before a person's disarmed because they're not thinking right. They're not in the right part of their brain. They're over here. They're in the emotional center. We want to move them here so they can think properly. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. Before I show the video, I'm just going to stop my share here and see, are there any questions so far? Linda, is that you raising your hand, or are you just putting a finger over your camera? Okay. Let's see. Anybody on the other page? if you have a question, just chime in, I guess, because I can't see everybody. You don't want to see the video, huh? Okay. All right, let me get that video going.
Sorry, Jason, my computer wasn't working yesterday, so I'm just trying to use my iPad today, so I apologize.
Okay, so I will take all other finger gestures as that. If you have a comment, just chime in. All right, so I'm going to show this video now. One thing to keep in mind: this was a video that I did with an intern a number of years ago. This was an employee assistance based example. So she uses the word therapy and therapist. You can just substitute coach and coachee for that if you want. It's the same difference. Okay, so let's see if this works. Okay. Okay, everybody see that? Okay. Let me just go full screen.
So that's what happened on Friday, but there's some other things that I wanted to run past you and get your opinion on. But you know, it really bothers me when you look down or you're looking up. It's like you're not even paying attention to me.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know, normally the clock behind you is visible to me. Right now, the shade is pulled down, is blocking it, so I can't see it, and I have to look at the one down there, keep track of the time.
That's a defensive response, right? And so this is what not to do.
I'm really bad at keeping track of time, so that's why I look down there.
Well, that's really funny because as a therapist, you should be prepared for things like that. You should know, you know what I mean? Like you should have a clock or a watch, and then you're looking back and you're looking away. Like, what's the point of me even coming to therapy if you're not going to pay attention to me and think about yourself?
Yeah, you know, I try to do that. You know, somebody else happened to pull the shade down. I just didn't notice it before we started. And, you know, it's, you know, let's see if we can move past this, huh?
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like you're not here. Like you don't care. Like this has come up before. You're always looking away. Like, I mean, do you just not care that I come in here? Do you not want me as one of your clients?
No, I do care. I care a lot. I'm not sure. You know, I really don't want this to be the focus of our discussion today. I would really like to get back to what you were talking about before.
What about my emotions and my feelings? Like, this is just kind of ridiculous. And this is what I'm talking about. People never listen to me. And then you're not listening to me either. And you're my therapist. It doesn't make any sense. Like, what am I coming to therapy for if no one's going to listen to me?
So you can see there that as soon as I respond defensively by trying to explain, I start going down this rabbit hole where you know, I explain something and she just gets more angry, and then I explain more and it just spirals and it gets out of hand very quickly. Okay, now we're gonna see the disarming way to do it.
So that's what happened on Friday, and I'm really wanting your opinion on something. But you know, it really bothers me when you keep looking down or away, like you're not paying attention or anything.
You know, I'm sorry. I'm really happy that you told me that, because that is really rude of me to do that. To glance at a clock while you're, you know, here trying to get my opinion, talk about important things. It must really make you feel like what you have to say does not matter, and that's got to feel really disrespectful and hurtful. I must make you really angry when I do that. So I'm really grateful that you told me about it. I have a feeling that other people probably feel the same way and just haven't said anything. It is a really bad habit of mine. And it's something that I've been working to change. So again, I apologize. The mistake I made was pulling the shade down and it's covering the clock that's right behind your head.
Okay.
So, and I'm terrible at keeping time, so I have to look down to look at the time, and it's just bad planning on my part. But even so, I'm really sorry that happened and it made you feel that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm really happy that you told me that. That is really rude of me to do that. I have a feeling that other people probably feel the same way and just haven't said anything. It is a really bad habit of mine. It must really make you feel like what you have to say does not matter, and that's got to feel really disrespectful and hurtful. It must make you really angry when I do that. So I'm really sorry that happened and it made you feel that way.
Thank you.
Okay, so first I have to, uh-oh, it won't go away now. Hang on one sec. Okay. Sorry, 1 second. I have too many windows open and I can't find. I'm so glad that we... Where is my...
Actually, I needed to tell you that today's session we're going to have to reschedule due to an emergency. So
It's in the session.
I'm so sorry. I cannot find my window.
This is the worst possible time to cancel on me.
You want to maybe close the
I will.
the other window?
I'll figure this out. Hang on.
I made a commitment with you
here we go.
to see you once a week, and I'm breaking that.
Okay. Sorry about that. Whew, that was stressful. YouTube would not go away. All right. Grounding. So, first of all, I apologize for my bad acting. In that scenario, Samantha actually wasn't acting, and we did not script that. We just said, look, I'm gonna look at the clock. You have a reaction. Let's see what happens. Did anybody notice her reactions to me, like from one example to the next? You notice how, like in the second example, as I was disarming her, like you could see her body language and her facial expression totally change. And again, this was not acting. Like this was her actual reaction to that.
So I'm a little close to it.
So
I've seen it and I've worked with you.
You can see how people change when you acknowledge them. Did anybody have any questions about the steps? It's honestly, it's I'd like to have a more current video that shows the steps a little bit more coherently. And I also left out the wrap up too, where I check in with her at the end and I say, did I get everything right? I didn't do that, but you know, she seemed disarmed, so I kept going. I don't know. What are people's reactions to that?
But I didn't really notice it until I just listened to it today. So as he was apologizing to her, he was still looking down. He was not necessarily making eye contact with her. His head was rather down. And I would have preferred to see him making eye contact with her and really, you know, maybe even a little bit more body language. His body language didn't change. And I might have wanted to see it be more open as he was, you know, apologizing. I also noticed that he gave her an emotion. He said, that must make you angry. I would have preferred to hear from her how it made her feel instead of him saying that must have made you angry. So that jumped out at me, and he did that twice. Another time he said that must have made you angry. So those were just things that, you know, like I said, I worked with Jason for a long time. I've watched this before, but that was just the first time I really noticed him pulling back a little bit that I didn't notice before.
Thank you, Linda, for sharing that. Jason, can you hear us now?
Yeah. Hey, everybody, I'm back.
Okay, good.
I can
It's
hear you.
okay,
Wow.
Jason. I already said my comments.
Okay, so briefly, like one comment, Jason, in terms of sharing the emotions, do you share the emotions that you think the person is having, or do you ask, for example, you share that I'm hearing that you're angry? So is that part of the technique to put in words what the emotion you're hearing, or you ask the person, how are you feeling?
That's an excellent question. I don't ask in these situations because inquiry, when someone is angry, makes them more angry. So in other words, if I were to say to her, if I had asked Samantha, if I said, hey Samantha, I get the feeling that you're kind of angry right now, she'd be like, yeah, no kidding. Thank you, thank you, Captain Obvious. So in these situations, I know the person is mad because they're confronting me. I know that anger is the dominant emotion. So that's a good point. Why don't I just lead with that, right? Why don't I just come right out and say, wow, you must be really angry right now. That doesn't work either.
That's what I heard you say, Jason, and that was my comment, that you said that this must make you feel angry. And you said that twice to her. And I might have, and I've seen this, and I might have said, I'm seeing some strong emotions. Is there something, is there some way you can put that into words? And then I also know what I also recognized, and I've seen this many times with this video, as you were apologizing about not looking up at the clock, I didn't see you making as much eye contact with her. I actually saw you pulling back a little bit and maintaining your same physical stance, as opposed to maybe changing your stance and being more open.
Oh, that's interesting. I actually interpreted it differently. I viewed it as you were kind of instead of like coming up, you were, I don't know, it's like standing back, standing down. Yes, more submissive, and apologizing. That's how I understood it. That's how I interpreted, not the way that Linda did. So it's interesting.
I was attempting to be diffusing. And have a diffusing demeanor in my own ham-fisted way. It doesn't usually work very well. Like I said, I'm not the most adept at that. Damien, can you make me a co-host again so I can share my screen once more? So the other thing is that you can acknowledge people's anger, and I would actually encourage you to do so. I think that downplaying people's anger, if I were to say, well, you seem a little bit peeved right now, or if I were in England, I might say, oh, seems like you have a spot of bother. That's it's not sincere, it's not complete, and it's not necessary. If the anger is there, you can acknowledge it, but you have to earn the right to do that. And the way you earn the right to do that is by acknowledging the truth in the complaint and the cognitive empathy. Now, a couple of things about this example are interesting. One, my offense is obvious, right? Like, it's not hard for me to acknowledge the truth in the complaint. I looked at the clock. You've got me. I'm busted. That's easy. And so you're right. I did look at the clock, and that did give you the impression that I wasn't listening, and that further gave you the impression that I don't care. And so that's the truth in the complaint. That's the cognitive empathy. And then the last part, the emotional empathy, is, and that made you mad. Did I get that right? So in that example, it's not hard to find the truth in the complaint. Sometimes the truth in the complaint is harder to acknowledge. And so let's do another live example of this. And I'll show you what I mean. And then after that example, I'll go and break down these steps a little bit more. I'll get into them and tell you a little bit more about what they mean. So let's see, who's a good. No, you're all too nice. All right, Christine, I can count on you for this. You're super nice too, which I'm
too nice. I know that.
which makes it easier for me. So what I need you to do now is let's pretend that we're at the end of this workshop and you hated it. and I did a terrible job. And so I just want you to basically tell me in, you know, in a few words that I sucked.
Oh, come on, Jason. I'm too nice for this. Okay, Jason, I felt that you came in and you didn't ground yourself, and you let your nerves get rattled. And I just don't feel like you cared.
Yeah. You know, Christina, I really appreciate you, you know, being direct with me about that. Takes you know, only a true friend tells someone when their fly is down. You know, you're right. Like I didn't come in super grounded. I was kind of erratic. I tend to be that way anyway. I had all kinds of issues with technology, and I messed up my sound. And clearly, whatever I did today, it didn't work for you. You know,
Well,
like
it's not that it didn't work, Jason. I just, you know, I put a lot of time into this, and I just don't feel like I just don't feel like you cared. You know, I feel like you let me down.
Yeah. So there's something about the way that I handled myself or came across today that gave you the impression that I didn't care, that I didn't put in my full effort. And this was really important to you. You put a lot into this. You were expecting me to deliver. And from your perspective, I didn't do that. So I could see why you would be disappointed and angry at me for not showing up better. Did I get that right?
I guess I'm
You can stop there.
like, why, Jason? Why? I like role playing, just so you know, Jason.
Yeah, I should have set the guidelines a little stricter. Like just say one thing, Christina, and let me talk. Don't say anything else.
Shut up.
So you see how, like, now if we had stopped after the first exchange, if Christina just said, Jason, you just suck today, and you know, that's not something that I necessarily agree with, right? Like, the truth is not so obvious. It's not so concrete. Like, I just looked at a clock. Like, what you're telling me is subjective, and I may not agree with it. And I cannot agree with something that I don't agree with. I can't just say, you're right, Christine, I sucked. There's the truth in the complaint. No. I have to find your truth, and I have to find the parts that I can identify with. Like, I didn't, you know, like what I did today, you know, on some level didn't work for you. There's something that I was doing, I'm not sure what it is, but there was something I was doing that was giving you the impression that I didn't put in enough effort, that I didn't ground myself enough. Like, I give as much as I can without being disingenuous. And that's the truth in the complaint.
Well, and also with my saying you don't care, it's like, well, I'm projecting all the caring on you, right? I mean, the not caring.
That's irrelevant. That's okay. It's, you know, it's not about me at this point, right? Like, it's about you and me addressing your feelings and your needs.
Yeah. Jason, you have a few questions in the chat. Do you want?
Yes. Let's see here. I'm just going to give you more stuff to complain about.
No.
All right. Let's see. Power, privilege, and rank. Yeah, that's a good thing to acknowledge. What would I do if the other person is a bully and condescending and the gender role is reversed? Yeah, so this works on bullying too. But again, when you're dealing with someone who's a bully, hopefully that's not your client. Hopefully your client is not a bully and trying to bully you. If that's the case, you might want to get a new client. But this does work with bullying, but the goals have to be adjusted, right? Again, you're not, if you're dealing with a bully, you may not get the person to become rational and have a productive conversation. You may just get them to stop attacking you so that you can just get out of that situation. That might be the best you can do. Let's see. What if the individual's anger isn't about you, but are the focus of the emotions at the moment? Well, then it's easier, right? Like it's actually easier to disarm someone's anger if it's not directed at you. But you would acknowledge it the same way. You would still try to identify the truth in the complaint and the cognitive empathy. Now, I haven't even explained what cognitive empathy is yet, but I'm going to get there. Let's see. I feel an imperative to avoid triggering emotions and making assumptions. Hence, I wonder what the role of inquiry would be in diffusing. Yes. So this is one of those exceptions, right? I agree with you, Andrew, that I also don't. I'm not in the habit of making assumptions about people's emotions, except in this situation, because when someone is angry and confrontational and attacking, you can assume that anger is there. There may be other emotions, like in Christine's example, I was able to identify disappointment as well. But again, when someone is activated, if you use inquiry, it can really backfire on you, because if you say, "Well, Christine, how did it make you feel when I did that?" or you know, what's coming up for you as a result of this? Like I'm inviting her to amplify her emotions. She's going to go off on me, and I'm going to have a much bigger ball of anger and emotion to deal with than if I try to make inferences about it. I would rather be wrong and let them correct me than ask them and have them say, "How can you even ask me that? Isn't it obvious?" So that's my approach. Again, you don't have to agree with it.
Jason, can you hear me?
Yes.
Colleen, I'm curious because in my experience, when I get them to share with me, then they feel heard, and it actually doesn't amplify it. Usually they just feel like if they can get it out, they feel really good that I've allowed them to do that. So I'm curious with your approach. I'm happy to try it on for size, but do you know what I'm talking about when you let somebody kind of just share, like, this is how it made me feel, and then I acknowledge those feelings? It seems to be effective, but what you're saying is the opposite of that. So I have a lot of curiosity around it.
Well, I don't think we disagree. I think it's just a matter of order. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to address their initial upset, because when someone gets really angry or really charged, then they're not rational. And so if they're continuing to vent, I'm not going to interrupt them. I'm not going to jump in and say, "Wait, stop. I think what you're saying is," like, I'm going to let them keep going. Okay. But if they've just sort of hit me with one shot, I'm not going to invite more shots. I'm going to try to disarm them first, then get into a conversation about it, so we can talk about it more productively, more rationally. Because if they're just, if I invite them to share more before they're disarmed, it's not going to be a productive sharing. It's going to be this downloading session where they're going to hit me with this massive stuff, and it's going to be very hard for me to sort through it.
Okay.
So it's about managing what's coming at you.
Okay.
And the difference is intensity, right? I mean, if I was really angry, and to acknowledge that and like to back it down and then go into conversation of, well, what does it mean to be cared about? Then that would be a different approach. But if it's the matter of intensity, right, Jason, too? Or that's what I'm interpreting.
Yeah, it's intensity, and it's thinking ability. You know, it's, again, if the emotion's too strong and they're over here, they're not going to be thinking well. So we want to get them here before we try to sort through stuff. Otherwise, it's just going to be hard.
And Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I've heard you say, sometimes we have to disarm them more than once. So you may get them disarmed, but then something else might come up, and you'll have to go through that same process and disarm them again. Am I remembering correctly?
Usually do, yeah. It doesn't usually work so well that you just disarm them one time. Although, in the situation with Samantha, that was actually based on a real situation. That actually happened, and I did that, and in 30 seconds we were past it. I got lucky. That was one where it went well. Others, not so well. Sometimes people are bringing in a lot more context to their anger, and you know, you're dealing with not just what you did to them, but with what 100 people or 1,000 people did to them before. So you may have to keep doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jason, I have a question. It's
Sure.
Belinda. I'm thinking of a time when someone accused me of something, and I asked, and I was very surprised, and I asked, help me, I said, help me understand what I did that is making you feel this way. And that just exploded everything. And she refused to talk to me after that. And she said I was manipulating her. And so help me understand what happened.
Well, that's kind of my point, Belinda, is that yeah, asking that question, it opens the door for the other person to say, how do you not already know that? You know, and don't insult my intelligence by asking me that. You should already know. Or if you don't know, then I don't respect you. So we could go back and forth on this. I don't want you to lose out on your opportunity to practice. So there's a couple more points I want to cover, and then I'm going to let you take a stab at this. We're gonna try this out. One more quick screen share. So breaking down these steps. The initial statement of gratitude. This is the easiest part, right? This is the part where, and by the way, this, if you're looking to delay or buy time, this is the way to do it, right? Like somebody catches you off guard and you say, you know, I'm actually grateful that you told me that. Now, this doesn't have to be insincere. Like, you can sincerely say, I'm grateful that you told me this, and here's how. When someone is direct with you, even if they're nasty, that is better than if they are indirect or passive aggressive. If they hold their feelings and don't share them with you, you cannot work with that. But if somebody is super nasty and super rude and comes straight at you, you can work with that. Therefore, you can be grateful for that. You just when you say, I'm glad you told me that, you leave out the part about their nasty demeanor. You can say it any way that you want, that's culturally appropriate. You know, some people say that, you know, it's culturally inappropriate to thank someone for insulting you, so you don't thank them. You just say, you know, it helps me that you're saying this. All right, and again, this buys you time, buys you a moment to ground yourself. But the truth is, you could actually skip this step. You could go straight to the truth in the complaint if you want to. It's just the easiest one. This one you can have preloaded. The rest of it you cannot preload. You have to think on your feet. So the truth in the complaint, again, it's their truth. It doesn't matter what you think. It's the other person's reality. So yeah, if it's objective, if you looked at a clock, own it. If someone tells you that you were horrible, you don't own what you don't agree with, but try to look for something that you can see, like, okay, well, I may not know what I'm doing that is upsetting you, but clearly it's something. There's something that I'm doing that is hitting you the wrong way. And I'm going to try to figure out what that is. You can also redefine a criticism in the truth in the complaint. I did a vignette a long time ago with somebody who he said his attack on me was, you know, people just don't like you. That was his attack. And so I redefined that by just downgrading the complaint to say, yeah, I know I can be a bit of a loudmouth, and I talk too much, and I can, you know, my energy level kind of overwhelms people sometimes. I can agree with that. And that's a lot, that's several grades below people just don't like me. So that's another way to do it. Main thing during the truth of complaint, don't try to explain what you did. Notice how when I tried to do that with Samantha, it blew up on me. I forgot to, you know, raise the curtain so I could see the clock. She doesn't care. She's thinking over here. So next we have cognitive empathy. This is, for cognitive empathy, you want to answer the question, why does this matter? Why does the issue matter to this person? Why would it make them mad? If you can answer that question, you can develop cognitive empathy. This is the hardest part of disarming, because you really don't, you don't know. You really have to think on your feet. You really have to pay attention to what the person said, to what the context is, to what you know about them. To answer that question, why does this matter? It's the hardest part, and anything that you can do to demonstrate cognitive empathy is a win. And again, you could be wrong, and that's okay. If you make a hypothesis and say, well, I could, you know, it seems like Christine, like I'm like what I did today just didn't work for you. She said, no, it's not that it didn't work for me. It just seemed like you didn't care. So you can be wrong, and the person will correct you, and then you can pick up on that and continue developing the cognitive empathy. And then the last part is emotional empathy. This part is easy, right? Because we know it's anger. We know the anger is there. We just can't say it until we've earned the right to say it. We have to demonstrate some truth in the complaint and some cognitive empathy first. And then we want to end with inquiry. Did I get that right? Am I leaving anything out? You know, that's when we invite the other person to fill us in on what we missed, and then start over again. You know, keep addressing the truth in the complaint and the cognitive empathy. That's where we kind of, you know, build it out a little bit. And then once you can see that the person is calm and thinking, then you can get back to problem solving. Then you can ask the question, all right, how do we keep this from happening in the future? Or what could we do differently? Can't ask those questions too early. If it doesn't work, if the person is still angry, you just have to keep disarming. And you may have to do it for a while. Linda knows there was this one former client of mine who would get so enraged at various things, and often drag me into the sources of her anger. And sometimes I would have to spend, like, you know, sometimes 30-40 minutes doing nothing but disarming. And then the last, you know, 10-15 minutes of that session, we'd have a productive conversation. It was very healing. But there was no alternative. There was nothing else I could do.
That's why I ask. You know, sometimes you disarm, and then you have to disarm again, and then you have to disarm again.
Sometimes you have to disarm exclusively. You never get to the problem solving, and it's pointless to jump ahead because you're dealing with someone who's not thinking. All right, a couple things to watch out for before we practice. This is what I call rearming. So I've already talked about explaining or trying to problem solve before the person is disarmed. If you try to explain yourself, if you try to say, what can we do about this? You're going to provoke them. They're going to get more agitated. Also, attempting to disarm when you are provoked. Again, you got to be grounded. If you're riled or rattled, you're not going to do a good job. If you have a lot of pride, if you need to be right in every conversation, you're not going to be successful at disarming until you let go of that. Because again, disarming is about being right. It's about winning. Also, apologizing excessively is another one. Now I'm going to get myself in trouble here with my Canadian colleagues, because I know it's like apology is very, what's the word? It's very common in your expressions. Like Canadians apologize a lot, and I'm not making any cultural judgments about that. And actually, if you're working with a Canadian client, it probably wouldn't make a difference. It probably wouldn't be noticed. Outside of that context, though, excessive apology can start bringing you into submission. Right? It could start to come across as submissive, and that's going to invite more confrontation, more attack. And then finally, you want to avoid what I call the softballs, which is saying, I understand, I know how you feel, I'm sorry if I did this. Those are very provocative statements. And you know, I call them softballs because it's like pitching a softball to a professional baseball player. They're going to hit it out of the park. And you will have made your work 10 times harder. So all right, so other applications to coaching. I'm not going to spend time on that. We got to move on. Here's a inspirational quote. I apologize for the gender biased language. Many a man would rather you heard his story than grant his request. Just keep that in mind. This is just about listening. It's about listening and making people feel heard and understood and acknowledged and cared about. And when people get that, they feel better than if you actually do what they want, what they ask you to do. All right, here's some resources. If you want to see those videos, that video or other videos, there's a link to my website where you can see that. Informal practice groups. This is what we're going to do in a minute. You can practice disarming anytime. You just need one other person. Although it's ideally if you have two other people, it's even better. There's a book that I co-authored where my chapter details this. So it's there if you can find it on Amazon, or if you wanted to reach out to me. David Burns kind of developed sort of the precursors to this concept. And then here's my contact information. Now we're talking about practice. Here's how we practice. We're gonna do triads. You're all familiar with those, I'm sure. Groups of 3, and so we're gonna have 3 roles. We're gonna have a complainant. That's the person who is on the attack. So you have to read the complaint. Does everybody have the handouts, by the way, that were sent ahead of time? There is no.
I will share
the PowerPoints.
Yeah, they are in the chat room, and Elaine sent them today in the morning. So if you look at your,
I will send them right now via chat. The 2 handouts.
Yeah. So on the Word handout, there are 4 or 5 scenarios, or 4 or 5 vignettes. And so the complainant, if you're the complainant, you read that vignette to the disarmer. Or the coach. That's the person who who you're going to confront, and the coach is going to disarm you. And then the third person is going to be the observer, and they're going to observe the interaction, and afterwards give you feedback on how you did. Now, here's how. I don't want you to go back and forth. You remember how Christine and I went back and forth? Don't do that. It'll take too long. So when you're the complainant, just read it and you're done. And then if you're the disarmer, just do a quick disarm. Try to go through those 4 steps. Don't spend more than a minute or 2, and then just end with, did I get that right? Am I understanding you clearly? Did I miss anything? And then that's the end. I want the observer to say to start with, okay, what went well? What steps did you hit successfully? And here's what I think worked, and here's some other things I think you could have done. And then finally check in with the complainant, and the complainant needs to say, to what percent do you feel disarmed? From 0 to 100, and be honest about it. And then you switch, and then someone else is the complainant, someone else is the coach, and someone else is the observer, and everybody needs to get at least 1 turn, and hopefully a couple of turns. All right, so I'm gonna send you into groups. Any questions about that before we go? Okay, I'm going to.
How long? I am doing that. Jason's sending the groups. For how long do you want people to be in the groups?
So three members per group, and let's do it for 10 minutes and then come back.
Okay, some of the groups have 4 people. So if there is the 4th can be an observer or can rotate the roles. And if they have any questions about what to do, you want to write something in the chat room about directions?
Sure, I can. I'll write directions in the chat. Yeah. I'll do that as you're going. And
you need to do it now before they go to the chat rooms, because once that they're in the chat rooms, they can see as a message. That's a possibility to. I can send them, but it's better if you.
I won't waste any more time with it. I'll just say really quickly. Just again, this is a quick hit, right? It's like read it, quick attack, quick disarm, quick feedback, boom, switch. A couple minutes each. Don't spend a ton of time on it. Don't debrief it. People tend to talk about this, and and sort of chatter on after they do it. Make sure that everybody gets a turn. Just keep practicing. It's only 10 minutes.
Okay, great. So everybody need to first download from the chat room the handout so you can do the exercise.
Yeah.
Quick question, Jerry?
Yeah. Do we read the context first before we give the statement?
Yes.
Or do we just give the statement? You give the context first and then do the statement?
Yeah, read the context and the statement. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Enjoy the exercise.
All right.
So
Cecilia,
I feel like, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not progressing toward my goals and my frustration is rising.
People think, did it live up to its difficulty?
I'd like to say a quick comment. Can I, Jason?
Oh, hey, Angela. Yeah, sure.
Okay, I just want to say what was really helpful is Elaine and I were going through the different scenarios, and I believe it was Michael pointed out that some were more clear-cut than others. So as a coach, we could get behind our professional role and say, oh, this is our professional role. We can't do this, we much more confidently, where others were more gray and harder, and we were struggling with that a little bit more. So it was a nice distinction.
Yeah.
So good scenarios, Jason. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Angela. Anybody else?
I think we worked on number 4, which I think was very challenging because it's asked the client is really frustrated about asking questions, and after you kind of go through, it's like, where do you go? But asking another question on where they want to go. So it was, we talked about really just trying to focus on the feelings there and exploring this together. Let's explore this and trying not to put that in the form of a question. I guess not the Jeopardy case in this scenario. I don't know if you have any feedback on that one.
Yeah, well, number 4 is a curveball, right? Because the client is essentially asking you not to be a coach. And so the natural defensive response is to say, but come on, I want to be a coach, and we agreed on this, and this is my role, and just let me ask you questions, and we have to disarm the person first. We have to acknowledge, their feelings, their needs, and we have to kind of recontract again before we can get back to that issue. Because right now they're mad that they're not being provided for given information. Anybody else?
Jason, I have a question.
Yes.
What is it if we just make a long silence, counting till, I don't know, 20, so that everybody, that the coachee can kind of also feel the silence? Is it provocative or is it good?
I will let you use your discretion on that. I mean, if you know your client well, And if you use that as part of your coaching repertoire, you might try it. I think, for someone like me who's kind of a loudmouth, that would stand out. It would, and if I had a prolonged silence, the client might say, okay, what the hell's going on with you? Why aren't you saying anything? It might scare them. So it just, I think it depends on you, your style, your relationship with the client. I'll leave that one to your discretion.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other experiences in the practice sessions? Anybody really struggle with this? Anybody find it impossible not to explain, not to defend, not to problem solve?
Jason, one thing we talked about a little bit was the duration of the disarming exercise, and I guess maybe you just have to kind of judge your client, but it's like in your video, you kind of went on and on about it. And in my style, it would be more like, good point, thanks for bringing that up. Sorry, I'll make the appropriate changes, let's move on. And not that way, but you know what I mean? Just kind of, let's get it over with and move on. Is there any guidance on that?
No, I think you're right. It's specific to your style, right? If most people are more succinct than I am. And so most people are probably going to just cover one thing, as long as you're hitting all the points, right? As long as you're covering the truth and the complaint, the cognitive empathy, as long as you're covering the points, you don't have to be long-winded. So in that sense, do what feels natural to you, not what I do.
Thanks.
Sure.
Jason?
Yes, hi.
We had a question about the dividing line between explaining and defending yourself in number 2, the scenario where the coach has to say, well, this was the agreement and this is what the coaching relationship is about. I don't, whatever, do recommendations and when do you stop using that, or is that defensive, or you can just explain after you have disarmed?
So in my opinion, explanations will be interpreted as defensiveness. So we can argue all day whether or not they are actually defensive, but they will be interpreted by the client, by the complainant as defensive. So that's why I emphasize over and over again to try to postpone the explanations until after the client is fully disarmed, because they're not thinking yet, and you don't want to rearm them by coming across as defensive. So you can get there. You can always get there. We know how to explain. We know how to problem solve. We can always get there. But it's not going to be. It's so much easier to do once the person is disarmed first.
So how do you know that they're completely disarmed?
Good question. I think some of it is verbal, right? Like you saw in the video, or if you pull up the video again and watch it, you'll see Samantha's body language and facial expressions change when she's disarmed. Also, they're not attacking you. they're not saying things and not interrupting you. And also, you check in with them. You say, "Did I get this right? Am I missing anything? How are you feeling now?" At that point, at the point where you're checking in with them, when you're inquiring, you're inviting them to let you know, and hopefully they're honest with you, and so that will give you information about whether they're disarmed or not.
So Lynn and I paired up, and she did that. She asked me, she's like, "Are we okay now? And can we move on?" So she asked me and then gave me the opportunity to let her know, yes, I'm okay now and we can move on. And I thought that was really helpful. She did a good job.
Mm-hmm. Lynn, you have raised the hand, and then Jason, we need to start wrapping up.
Okay. Who raised the hand?
I did a few hands, but Lynn had the hand before, and Susan too.
Okay, yeah, I raised my hand just really quickly. One thing that I noticed in that practice was that when something came at me that I wasn't expecting, the first place I went to was, well, what is what was our agreement, or am I supposed to do that or not supposed to do that? And so as soon as I went to that thinking place, I disconnected from my client. And the faster I was able to kind of put that aside and just stay with Linda, the better able we were to move forward and process it together and then get to explanation.
Right. Good point. Yeah. For this to work, we can't be focused on ourselves or on our own thoughts. We have to be focused on the other person. That's the only way that disarming ever works, is if people feel attended to. I think we have time for one more question, and then I have to exit.
Jason, I just had a question. Since we're all using Zoom and virtual ways of interacting, you lose a lot of the body language and even, with your glasses, we can't see your eyes. Techniques for working, for being able to work in virtual environments, making this work? Or is it the same thing?
Yeah, well, I don't know that there is a specific technique to overcome that, because you're right, we do lose a lot. I just expect that you'll have to work harder at it.
Okay.
You'll have to work harder at it. You'll have to work harder to notice when clients are angry, because they may not be as obvious about it. And you'll have to work harder to see if your disarming is having an effect, and you'll have to check in more because you're just not getting as much information. That's an excellent point. So one last thing, there was another handout that I gave you, and that's just sort of like for your own kind of homework, if you will. It's got a few exercises to help you identify your natural response to confrontation, some alternatives to explaining, things like that. I encourage you to go through that. It'll just be more preparation. And again, I would encourage you to find a practice partner and keep practicing at this, because again, nobody's an expert just from that practice session that we did today. It has to be followed up. It has to be reinforced. Even, as much practice as I get with this, even I can be triggered into a natural response under the wrong circumstances. So we just have to keep at it. Anyway, thanks again, everybody, for tolerating me today. I apologize for some of my technical difficulties, and appreciate your patience with that. I really appreciate all the really thoughtful questions and comments, and I also apologize for not answering all of them. I wish we had another hour to do that, but if you feel free to contact me directly if you have other questions, I will get back to you. And for those of you who know me well and who I haven't been in touch with in a while, please reach out to me. Please stay connected to me. I'm kind of over capacity right now, and I'm not doing a good job of staying connected to people. So.
Jason, thank you very much. Let's open our microphones so Jason can hear how we recognize him.
Thank you,
Jason.
Thank you. Great.
Very useful.
Jason, we are completely disarmed.
Great.
Thanks.
Excellent.
You, Missy. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jason, for a great presentation. If you want to write a note to Jason in the chat room, you can do that. And we are going to have our 30-minute break now. And in 30 minutes, we're going to have Carol Geffen. We're going to be doing a presentation on coaching and leadership. So
no, we're back in it. Or half an hour. Sorry.
Yes. So that's different than yesterday. Okay. Yes. Today we had 1 hour and a half sessions, and then we'll have a break. Different than what was yesterday. Okay. We'll see you in 30 minutes.